Kevin, I want to thank you for bringing a story into the light of, into the public because many people didn't know anything about the massacre and the mistreatment of soldiers in 1917. Can you tell us what was the your objective?
Sure, sure. Well, I saw this photo about 30 years ago in a book of the trial. And, the photo is these 63 black soldiers all together being surrounded by white soldiers with bayonets fixed to their rifles. And the caption said, the largest murder trial in American history. And I said, what's this all about? And I'd never heard anything about it. I'm kind of a history guy. I'd never heard anything about it. And so I looked into it and found this really great story behind it. And I just felt it was really important that people know this story. I mean, there's so much kind of what I call hidden history, hidden especially racial history in American life that I think, will help us to understand each other a lot more the more we know about it.
It's interesting because there's another Watchmen, the show.
Yes.
Unveils the massacre in 1921 in Tulsa that we didn't have any idea. So I guess that there are many historical events and terrible things happen in the past that they are hidden.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially, I think we all hear a lot about slavery. We know about slavery, but that period from about 1880 to about 1930 almost is there was this, every major city had these kind of events happening in them. And most of them were attacks on the black community in one way or another. A lot of lynching. I mean, it's a really tragic and sad chapter of American history, and unfortunately American racial history. And unfortunately, we just know very, very little about it.
And also it's a very contemporary thing because look, I mean, so many cases. George Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, one of the things that really struck me about this was that it was this is 1917, 103 years ago, but it happened this year, right? It happened this year, and with George Floyd, and police abuse has been with us for a very, very, very long time.
One of the things I liked about the film is we normally see soldiers or only soldiers, but in this case they enjoy dancing, they want to meet girls. The dancing scene was so beautiful. How did you take us into 1917, considering that we're in 2020?
Well, I have to say I grew up around older people, and my father was 60 when I was born. My father was born in 1898, so my father was a young man during this period, and so I grew up hearing a lot about the history, about a lot of the way it was back then. And it's always kind of stayed with me. That part of it is very important. As well, I grew up in what's called an army town. I grew up around a lot of soldiers, and so I knew how soldiers work in a town. How they hang out, how they're looking for girls. How they're just young guys, trying to do their thing. And so I tried to capture that in the film as best I could.
Yeah, it was very human. It was not like it felt like a documentary, but with actors, I think.
Yes, very, very good, very good.
Let me ask you, you've done a lot of TV too.
A little bit.
And you feel comfortable in many medias. You're a professor, you do TV, you do film. Do you think, since we're approaching the Emmys, do you think that the TV Academy is more inclusive, or it's still too wide like the Oscars were 2 years ago, they've been doing?
Sure. Well, I think we've come a long way. I mean, Oscars has come a long way, and television has come a very long way. I mean, some of the best stuff that's being done now is on television, and some of the most kind of interesting, stories of people of color is coming out of television right now. And I think, we can always do better, but we've come a long way, and I'm very pleased, especially this year. I think there's been numerous great examples of some really great storytelling with people of color.
So Kevin, as a filmmaker, how do you see the streaming platforms do you think they help to get messages in films like yours? I mean, the film industry is normally very corporate and blockbusters, but this is a human story, and
Yes.
so it helps to distribute your product.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, I think streaming has been a good thing overall. You know, it's, you know, I think filmmakers always want to be in a theater. I mean, I'm frustrated that, you know, a film won't be in more theaters. It's in some theaters right now, but because the pandemic, it can't be in more. Um, but I think as a whole, streaming has been good for smaller films like mine, movies that are about, you know, not blockbuster type stories, dramatic stories, or comedy stories that are smaller in scale in some ways, to find an audience. Because I think especially now people are looking for these films, and I think, you know, if all we got are blockbusters and those big huge, you know, corporate type films, I think that's bad for the culture. Ultimately, you know, it's bad for me, because people can learn something from our film. I think they can grow a little bit from our film, and plus hopefully very entertaining as well.
And I think with your film, we can learn, but also we can have fun, we can feel, we can go through emotions, we can get a rage.
Yes, yes, no doubt about it. And to me, that's, you know, I think people kind of are fearful of these kind of stories, but I think people are really hungry for these kind of stories. I think people don't mind getting mad, and people don't mind, you know, I mean, drama is drama, and anger is just another part of our emotions, right? So you know, it's okay to get angry, and it's okay to be mad at it. You should be angry, you should be mad, and hopefully that will kind of also inform how you feel about things today on some level.
In many countries, the historical narrative has been dominated by the privileged class. And like, I'm from Spain, and the stories that they tell you is the stories that the ruling class wants. And yes, I think the same thing happens in America. So do you agree? And do you think with this film, you're unveiling things that were not part of the daily conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, you know, Spain is a great example of kind of fighting against that, you know, and the same thing here as well. I mean, you know, I think our film specifically is really trying to fight against that. I mean, we're telling the story from the point of view of these soldiers who were, you know, have kind of been forgotten by history, and their lives and their stories. I mean, back to, you know, that term Black Lives Matter, right? Black Lives Matter, and their lives didn't matter so much back then. And we are now making their lives matter. We are bringing their story to the forefront. People will now know about this story and hopefully learn from this story and be better off by knowing this story. And so you're exactly right. I mean, that thing of, it's really important for any healthy democracy to be telling the story from the point of view. Clearly, that's a big part of it, the point of view of the people who are being oppressed.
So how did it feel to get the Oscar?
Well, it's pretty good, but man, it's pretty good. You know, it's, you know, it was, you know, it's a dream come true, right? I mean, that's, you know, everybody, when you're a kid, even when you're not a kid, you fantasize about winning that Oscar, right? And for it to happen was just kind of an amazing experience. It was a great night.
Well, it's a great honor to get an Oscar, and also I think it was well deserved. The film was so well written, and are you did the Oscar change a little your vision of the world or your access to Hollywood? You have plenty of access, but
sure, no, it has helped the cause. You know, it has definitely helped the cause, and I'm busier than I've ever been, and you know, it just kind of raised everything up to another level, I think, and I think people are appreciating my work now probably more than ever. So you know, I'm very, very grateful. I'm very fortunate.
Directing a movie, people think, oh, it's so glamorous. You go there and then you get made. But I've done set visits, and it's so much work. So what are the biggest satisfactions that you get from doing this job, which is harder than being a professor, I guess?
Sure, no doubt about it. Well, I think the satisfaction for me, I love the hard work of it. I mean, I really do appreciate the hard work of it. I mean, that's part of, you know, what I think gives you the satisfaction at the end. But I think in the end, for me, the satisfaction is telling a well-told tale. You know, I mean, I try to make movies about things I truly care about and that I truly think are important. And typically I have to work pretty hard to get those stories told. And so for me, you know, the fact that people will see the 24th on Friday and hopefully be moved by it and changed by it and entertained by it, that's all the satisfaction I'm really looking for.
My last question: the group of actors and actresses were they were great, believable. Where did you find them?
Sure. Well, Trey Byers, who plays Boston in film, he was a former student of mine at Kansas University, and so he helped.
I read his bio, and he was
yes.
in Kansas and everything.
Yes, he was one of my students,
Yeah.
and you know, he helped a lot of the people Trey knew and a lot of the people I knew. So we really kind of came together, and Thomas Hayden Church, he's really great in the film, and there's so many really fine actors, and I think all of them felt like this was a story that was important to be told, and they wanted to be a part of it in many ways because of that reason.
One last question: in 1917, we all spoke differently.
Yes.
The way we talk. Do you think language has evolved a lot in the last century?
It has, but then it hasn't. You know, there's so many terms that are that we still use today that you know they used back then, and I mean that's one of the things I really kind of got from my parents because they were older. You know, that the words that really informs my dialogue when I'm writing the script in terms of things I remember my father saying ways that he said it. You know. And I try to, anytime I can, I try to drop those words in the script, you know, in places. But you know, I mean, things have obviously changed. I mean, my father would not recognize the world today in so many ways. I mean, the internet and all of that stuff. So I mean, so much of the language change is really from technology and those things. But I think the everyday life part of living, I think that part of it stays pretty much the same in many ways.